afternoon. My name is Pam Scott, and I'm the Director of Client Services with Oasis Solutions. And today I will be presenting information on processing 1099s within Sage 100 and 100C. So we'll start today's presentation by letting everyone know that your line is muted during the presentation, but you do have the opportunity to ask questions. So as I go through sections, I will open it up and see if anyone does have a question, and just type in your question. And if you think of something during the presentation, go ahead and type your question in, and I will be taking time out through the presentation to answer those questions. If we receive a lot of questions and I can't get to them all during the hour that we have allotted, I will follow up with you after the presentation to address any of those questions. So I would like to thank everyone for joining us today, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go through some general information first, and then we'll actually be going into Sage and taking a look at some examples and showing you some of the 1099 information. So the first thing that you want to be aware of is to know, what's required in order to be able to process the 1099s within Sage. Basically, to make sure that you have the ability to install any year-end downloads if there are changes to the 1099 forms, you do want to be on a supported version of the software. So we have listed here the versions that are currently supported. And we have the 2015 version, which is 5.2, the 2016 version, which is 5.3, the 2017 version, and we're waiting on to see what service update or product update is required from Sage in order to be able to process your 1099s. And we anticipate that information within the next week. And also if anyone happens to be on the 2018 version. So those are currently the supported versions of Sage 100. And when we go into the product, I will show you how to check and determine what version you are currently running. If you need assistance with anything that we're talking about today, whether it be installing an interim release download if it's required, actually helping you step through Atrix and printing your 1099s, please be sure to give our office a call. So what is required to process 1099s from within Sage or Sage 100C? The Atrix e-filing and reporting must be installed on the user's workstation, and they must have sufficient permissions on that workstation to download and install any of the Atrix updates. And when you go into Atrix, if you haven't been into Atrix since last year when you processed 1099s, when you go in this year, it will want to download and update the forms and so forth. You are required to be current on your software maintenance with Sage. Otherwise, you will not have access to the Atrix software. And you also have to have an active internet connection. And also, in order to process the 1099s, you must have the functionality turned on within your Sage. And again, that's what we're going to look at shortly. So now we're going to take a look at Sage to see what is related to handling the 1099s. So if you'll bear with me just a second, we're going to move over to our Sage software. So the first thing I want to show everyone is how to determine what version you're running. So when you open your Sage software, if you go up and click on Help and About Sage 100, it's going to show you the version. Now today through the presentation, if I just say Sage 100 and I don't specifically reference 100C, please note that in this presentation today those terms are interchangeable. So whether or not you're running Sage 100 or if you're running Sage 100C, what we're going to take a look at today is exactly the same. So again, that's how you will check and determine what version you are running. So we are going to go into Accounts Payable, And the first thing that you would want to check, especially if you're new to Sage, is in Accounts Payable under your Setup, you go to Accounts Payable Options. Whoops. And I am still in my payroll demo company, so bear with me just a second here. Let me get back into my live demo company. And on the main tab, over on the middle right, it says 1099 reporting. If this box is unchecked and you go in to try to print 1099s, it is going to say that the system indicates that that feature is not available. So it doesn't mean that Sage doesn't do 1099s. It means that you literally just have not turned on the process within your setup options. And the other thing that you want to look and make sure and confirm is that your 1099 calendar year is set to 2017. Because when you're printing your data, you want to make sure that it's pulling the proper year. So that is how you will check to see if you are set up to process 1099s. Now under Accounts Payable, we're going to go to the main tab, and we're going to go into Vendor Maintenance. And I'm going to just grab a vendor, and I'm going to go to the Additional tab. And this is where the 1099 information is set up. So when you're setting up a new vendor, if they are subject to a 1099, it's going to default to none. And basically this information is going to be blank. So you're going to make the determination if they are subject to a 1099, are they a business or are they an individual? If they're a business, it is going to ask you for their taxpayer ID. If they are an individual, it's going to ask you for their Social Security number. Then it's also going to ask you which default form is applicable to this particular vendor. And Sage basically handles three types of 1099s, the miscellaneous forms, interest, and dividends. So those are the three types of things that you can track within Sage 100. So if I select miscellaneous, regardless of what form I check, it's going to default to box number 1. So you want to make sure that you or your AP staff know to set up the proper box so that it's recording it properly. And if I click my down arrow, I see all of these different boxes, but I may not know what the definition of box 5 is versus the definition of box 8. So if you're unsure what those box definitions are, what you can do is you can click on the 1099 history button to the bottom right of that field. Just say yes to save changes. And here are all of my box numbers. So you can see each box number with a definition. If I select the interest form, it shows the various boxes that are applicable for the interest form, and it does the same thing for dividends. If new boxes are added that might be applicable to 2017 reporting, that is one of the things that would be included in the interim release download, or the IRD, that would be issued by Sage probably within the next week. You can also see, as you have been, when you set this vendor up in the very beginning, as you start processing and paying invoices, then it actually accumulates the total of what has been paid in the applicable box. So again, this one was originally, before I changed it, set to box 7, and if I did have a Social Security number, I do need to enter that into the system, because this is going to actually print then on the 1099 form. So it's going to pull that information, and if it was a business, it will then bring in their federal ID and print that as well. So one of the things that we find that happens is, let's say that maybe you've had some changes in your AP department, and maybe the new person has not been consistent in setting up vendors to be able to track their 1099 information. So if you find that out after the fact, you still can process 1099s. And what you would do is, once you make that determination, go ahead and get this information set up properly. And then you could, I'm going to exit out of here. In an AP, I'm going to go to my reports, and I could run a check history report and base that on a particular vendor and see how much I had paid them in 2017. And so I could say that the vendor was equal to, and just select that one particular vendor. Also, you'll notice that it has a criteria. Do I want to run this report by period? My other option is by date. So you want to run it by date. You want to run it January 1st through 12/31, then select the applicable vendor, and then run this report, and it will show you any checks that have been processed for that particular vendor. Then you can take that number, you can go back to your vendor maintenance, and I'm going to grab one here maybe that isn't set up. Okay, so United Computers, let's say that we determine that they do need a 1099. I gather their information. I know that they get the miscellaneous form. I'm going to put in their taxpayer ID, and I know that it needs to be recorded in box 7. So I've set up this information. Then I'm going to click on my history button, and all of my information is blank. So I can go in, and whatever was on that payment history report, I can go ahead and type that number in and click OK. And now it has basically recorded that in the 1099 history, and I'll be able to generate a 1099 now. So if you find that you haven't been tracking it properly, it's easy to fix. If you find that maybe you have a lot of vendors and you haven't been tracking it properly and you just don't want to deal with it for 2017, take the time now to go ahead and start getting things set up so that you can start tracking properly at the beginning of 2018. I will note that a lot of times when I am working with clients on a pre-upgrade analysis, and I'll check with them to see if they process 1099s within the system, occasionally I will have someone let me know that they do 1099s, but they do them outside of Sage. And usually when I ask, most of the time they really don't know why it was done that way. The person before them did it that way, so that's just the way they continue to do it. But unless you have something other than miscellaneous interest or dividend forms, there is no reason why Sage cannot, that you cannot process those 1099s from within the system, not have to do them manually, or not have to have an additional software in order to process your 1099s. So if it's never been set up and you want some assistance on getting that taken care of, if you will just reach out to our support team, we'll be more than glad to assist you with that process. So I'm going to open it up right now and see if anyone has any questions on anything that we have looked at so far. And don't see any questions right at this point, but if you have any, please go ahead and start keying them in. And I will be glad to stop and take a look at those. I also wanted to show you some reports that might help you determine, how many 1099s you're going to be processing. If you want to take a look at your vendors now and see how many of them have been actually set up for 1099s. So in vendor maintenance, I'm going to, let me accept this. In vendor maintenance, I'm going to click on my magnifying glass, which is my lookup. And what I'm going to show you is the ability to set up a custom lookup from, basically you can do this anywhere from within Sage where you have that magnifying glass. You have your standard lookup, and then you also can create a custom lookup. So for a custom lookup, you're going to click the custom button. You're going to tell it to create a new view, and then it's going to walk you through a wizard. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one that I have already created so that you can see the parameters that I set. And we're going to look at 1099 vendors. Whoops. I'm going to click on custom. So when I clicked on custom initially, I said I wanted to create a new view, and I just called it 1099 vendors. Then I clicked my next button, and on the columns, it showed me the standard columns that are listed. Anything on the left is actually fields that are available to put in my custom lookup. So what I did is I added the field Form 1099, I added the taxpayer ID Social Security number field, the box 1099, the box 9, and the electronic consent signed field. To add a field, so let's say at the very bottom I wanted to include what state they're located in. If I click on this and highlight the field and use my right arrow, it then adds it to the bottom. If I realize I've selected, I don't need this sort field, it's not applicable to me, I can highlight it, use my left arrow, and it actually removes it. So if I don't need the state, I can remove it as well. And you have all of this listed. I can also change the order of the columns. The only thing I can't do is change the very first column. You see it has an asterisk by vendor number. So this has to be my first column. But if I wanted to move up the Form 1099 information right under the vendor name, I would highlight this, and then with this icon, I would move it up. And you'll see how it moves that up. And if I clicked finish, which I'll do, and then I'll go back into the screen, you can see when I do my lookup now, it has actually moved that column. I can also click and drag as well, but I did want to see that you can do that. So I'm going to go back into the custom and start going back through my wizard again. So I've shown you how you can add or remove fields or move fields. I'm going to click my next button. And this is where you can put in special criteria. So on this particular lookup, I said if the 1099 form, which is this column, is not equal to N, then I want it to show up on this screen. So basically what that's saying is this field M means that they're set up for a miscellaneous form. I means they're set up for an interest form, and if there was anything listed as D, it would be a dividend form. And N equals no, that they are not subject to a 1099. So I'm saying if it's not equal to N, then I would actually like to see this on the screen. So what this report can help me do is I can quickly look at this and determine how many 1099s are set up in the system that I'm going to have to process. I can look and see that with this vendor right here, that I don't have their taxpayer ID and or Social Security number listed. So I need to go back in and fill in that information. If you are having Atrix not physically mail them the 1099, but send an electronic copy of a 1099, you have to get the vendor's permission to be able to do that. And so if you were doing that, you have a checkbox in your vendor maintenance that they've given you permission, so you could look to see if there's anyone that had not given you permission that you needed to reach out to. So this is where I can customize my lookup. I'm going to click next. It's going to ask me what I want the title to be, what I want the column, the default search column to be, and the default begin with. And then at that point, I just clicked Finish, and then it created this custom lookup for me. So does anybody have any questions about that? I know last time someone wanted me to go back and show them how I had it sort on this Form 1099. So if you all didn't catch that on what that criteria is, please let me know. Okay. So basically, when you are ready to process your 1099s, and I am not set up with Atrix, so I'm going to show you where you go, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Atrix. But under Accounts Payable, you're going to go to Reports, and you're going to go to Form 1099 E-Filing and Reporting. And then when you click on that, it's going to want you to update and activate Atrix. And then you're going to process and print actually through Atrix. So for those of you that are not familiar with Atrix, the ability to print your 1099s does not cost anything to use Atrix to their service in order to print them. So the only thing you're required to do is to purchase the forms. And with Atrix, you do not use pre-printed forms. You purchase the blank perforated forms. And if you're unsure about what forms to purchase, if you will email me at pam@oasisky.com, I will send you a document that explains what type of form is compatible with Atrix for the 1099s, and it actually includes the W-2 information as well, should you need that. If you are required to e-file your 1099s, and I believe the limit is if you have more than 250 1099s, you are required to e-file. So the e-filing is done through Atrix, and there is a fee to do that, and they do charge a per vendor or per 1099 fee. And I can also send you pricing information and the link to find the pricing for Atrix. The other thing that you can have Atrix do is you can actually have them process the 1099s for you and actually mail them out to your vendors. And it doesn't really matter if you have 10 1099s or you have 10,000. The cost is very competitive, and most clients feel like it's even cheaper to have them do it rather than you purchase the forms, the envelopes, pay for the postage, and the labor to stuff all the envelopes and get everything ready to go. So the only thing you have to do is go into Atrix and make sure all of the information is correct, and then you can then submit that and have Atrix take care of everything for you. So it's up to you. So printing on your own, there's no fee. Anything else that you have done through Atrix, whether it be e-filing or having them process everything, there is a fee to do that. I do see that a question has come in, so if you'll bear with me just a second. Okay. The question that came in says that the vendor search list does not show different views. How can they get them on the screen? So what you have to do is, and the reason you don't have that is because you haven't created a custom one. If I had not created the ones for today's presentation, when I do a lookup, the only thing I'm going to see is standard. So to create a new one, you're going to click on the custom button, and you're going to have it say create a new view, and then I'm going to say test for webinar just so we can see which one it is. I'm going to hit my tab key or my return key, and then you'll notice my next button lights up. I can click next. This is where you see just the minimum fields that are on the screen. So to go in and add the 1099 information, I have to scroll down, and there's Form 1099. I'm going to put this information in. I'm going to go to my Next button. This is where I would put in the criteria, and it was if Form 1099 is not equal to N, then I'm going to click my Next button. And I can put in another criteria if I want to. I can click Next, and then I can click Finish. And now when I do a lookup, and if you were following me and doing it on your own system, when I do my lookup, now you can see where there's one that I've added. So if you will let me know if that answered your question. But the reason you weren't showing anything is that if you have never created a custom view, then the only thing that you're going to see there is standard. Okay, great. So that answered the question. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to submit them. So that pretty much takes us through what we wanted to look at actually from within Sage. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint for just a second. This basically is talking about using Atrix, being able to, talking about that it's free to print the forms unless you're having to e-file. So again, if you're going to need assistance, just let us know. Everyone should have received 2, if not 3, emails from us over the last 4 to 6 weeks that basically was talking about year-end. It was a little more focused with the questions related to payroll, but it also had questions about 1099s. So if it's your first year in processing 1099s, maybe you did it last year, but since it's something we only do once a year, you want to make sure that you would like to have some assistance. Those appointments are pre-scheduled. So they're filling up pretty fast. So if you do want assistance, what I'd like for you to do is email me at pam@oasisky.com if you don't have the original email from us, and I will send you those questions. And what we may do, because we're kind of getting late in the scheduling area, is just email me and I will actually give you a call and we'll run through the information and get your appointment set up. So the other thing that we talked a little bit about are the forms. So the type of forms that you need the blank perforated 4-up packets. And those packets do include the red print federal copy and the blank perforated recipient copy. And as it said, some packets include envelopes and some do not. As far as where you can order those forms, you can call your local supplier. You can go to someplace like Office Depot or Staples, and they should have them. You can also order them directly from Sage if you want to, but you do not have to order your forms through Sage. And last week during the presentation, someone told me that they actually thought that you could get the forms free through the IRS. That was the first time I've actually heard that, but that it might be something that you want to check out. Will we be able, someone asked if we'll be able to go back and watch this again for reference. The answer to that is yes. I will warn you, we kind of changed how we record these webinars. So they will be on our website, but it's going to include the 30 minutes that I was online before we started showing the kind of the loop presentation. So you'll need to kind of move that presentation 30 minutes in, and then what we're talking about today you will be able to see. I would anticipate that probably it will be published by next Monday. So does anyone have any questions about the forms? Okay. So again, if you feel like you're comfortable and you know what to do and you run into a last-minute issue, call our support team at this number listed on the screen. But if you do think you're going to have, if you're going to need assistance, we do ask that you please let us know now so that we can schedule an appointment. We have a team of consultants that are dedicated to nothing but assisting folks with year-end for W-2s and 1099s during the month of January. And if you don't schedule an appointment, there might be a delay in us having someone that can help you. So we don't want to delay that. And also I would encourage you, I believe the deadline for 1099s was moved up last year to January 31st. So I would also suggest that you not wait until the last minute to process those, and just in case you ran into any type of an issue. If you would like information on the document on what forms to purchase, if you would like the document on the Atrix pricing, if you will email me, and my email address is listed here, I will be glad to send that to you after the presentation this afternoon, or I'll get it to you tomorrow. Someone asked if I was going to do an Atrix demo, and that is not a part of this presentation. We do not, I do not do a demo of Atrix, and I don't believe that we have anything on our website from last year. So that was not included in today's presentation. If you do feel like you're going to need some assistance with Atrix and it's your first time using Atrix, you do need to reach out to us to get an appointment scheduled. Trying to think if there's anything else that we need to cover. I don't believe there's anything else. I talked early in the presentation about the IRD, and we are not aware of any major changes that are going to be made to the 1099 forms this year. But we won't know exactly what is involved with the IRD from a payroll or AP standpoint until it's actually issued by SAGE. Historically, they make it available to us between the 15th and the 20th of December. And as soon as that's released, we will take a look at it. If it is a situation where there's a change to the 1099 and it does not apply to you personally, so let's say that there's a change to the dividend form, and we know that all you're going to process are the miscellaneous forms, then we're going to recommend that we don't install that interim release download because it's not going to impact you processing your 1099s. And that way it saves you from going through the time as well as the expense of having us download and install it. And there was a question, will we be able to print out a hard copy of the information that we file with Atrix? And I believe the answer to that is yes, that you are able to do that, that you can print that out. If you want to send me a separate email when we finish today, I will pass that along to one of our year-end specialists and have them confirm that. But I do believe that you are able to print out and have that information. The other thing that you can do if you want to, this is probably more applicable on the payroll side, but after you have cut your last check for 2017, if you wanted to create a historical company and copy over your AP data so that you have it there for reference, or if someone loses their 1099 and you have to reissue one, you certainly can do that as well. And if you need assistance with creating that, again, just contact our year-end team, and we'll be glad to help you with that. So I'm going to open it up again to see if there's any additional questions. And if not, we've completed our presentation for today. So I'll give everyone just a couple more minutes to see if they have any additional questions. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending the webinar today. This is the last in the series that we are having for 2017. We will begin our standard monthly webinars starting back in February of 2018. And the first webinar that we will be having in 2018 will be an overview of the latest Sage 100, Sage 100C 2018 version. So we'll be covering some of the highlights and the new features and functionality of that product. And everyone should be getting emails sometime in late January or early February that will outline all of our upcoming webinars, or you can check them out on our website, which is oasisky.com. So I'm not seeing any additional questions, so I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And again, if you think of anything after we finish, just shoot me an email and I'll be glad to assist. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much. Bye-bye.